As I watched the second plane hit the World Trade Center, I desperately thought, please don't let this be connected to Islam. The city mourned in churches and temples. I needed a mosque or a Muslim religious leader, an imam who could help support my family during this horrific time. I needed a spiritual community, a safe haven where we could seek comfort. I had not felt comfortable at the mosque in our neighborhood where women prayed separately from men. I wanted to feel respected. I wanted to enter a mosque on an equal footing with Muslim men. To be treated as an equal, as I know I am in the eyes of God. Soon after this, my daughter came home from school and asked me, do we celebrate Hanukkah or Christmas? We celebrate a commercial kind of Christmas, but we're Muslim. We believe that Jesus is a prophet, not the Son of God. How could I give my daughter an intelligent, clear answer that she could deliver to other kindergarteners? Was there such an answer? The terror of September 11 had turned my alienation and anger into frustration at those who had invoked Islam to justify such heinous crimes. Wouldn't it be wonderful, I thought, if I could meet a Jewish and Christian mother to write a children's book with me that would highlight the connections within Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
I was an ex-Catholic, happily participating in an Episcopal church in New York City on September 11th. It challenged our perceptions of Islam and Muslims. Who were these people? Why did they hate us?
Pull it back, pull your back. Yeah.
I thought of the woman I greeted each morning at the school bus
Get as
stop.
close as you can, and then
Our
we'll start
daughters
squeezing,
were in
pull
the
it back
same
side.
kindergarten class. She
Even
looked
more.
like a stylish blend
Keep
of
going.
Europe and Middle East to me. I asked her where she was from, and she told me her parents were Palestinian refugees, and that she was born in Kuwait and had grown up in Dubai and in Virginia. And when she mentioned to me
You gotta pull it back.
her
pull it back.
idea
Just a little.
of bringing together a Muslim, a Jewish, and a Christian mother to write children's book of miracles, I jumped at the chance. The intent of the book was to educate children about our common heritage, and a friend recommended Priscilla, a Jewish woman, for a project. She had 2 sons and experience writing children's books.
Suzanne was looking specifically for a Jewish mother who wrote. I had never defined myself in those terms. I was a writer and a mother, but a Jew? Religion wasn't my field of expertise. I knew a fair amount about my religion. I had attended a somber interfaith service at my suburban Reformed temple on September 12th, where my rabbi and other local clergy tried to make some sense out of the unfathomable events the day before. But it occurred to me that there was no imam had been present. I had a persistent fear that New York City was going to be attacked again. For 35 years, I'd suffered from severe panic attacks. But after 9/11, I was thrown into one long, never-ending state of low-grade panic. I pretended to be calm, and I tried to convince myself that New York was alive and well. So when Suzanne called me, I was eager to collaborate on a children's book that would bring children hope, and bring me hope.
When Rania opened the door to her home for that first reading, Priscilla was immediately intrigued.
Cut the thing
She
back.
and Rania shared color photographs by the same photographer. And the same chandeliers in their homes. Priscilla felt this was an unusual omen.
I had never met a Palestinian woman before. Suzanne was less mysterious to me, and Rania was, well, Palestinian. I'm not sure how I expected a Palestinian woman to look or act, but I was intrigued by her as a person. She was beautiful, smart, sophisticated, and warm. She was confident, but refreshingly self-deprecating, one of my favorite traits in any person. I felt an immediate connection to her.
I had met many Jewish people representing an array of political opinions, but I knew it was possible that Priscilla and I could clash. Palestinians and Israelis were at war. But my identity is tied up in my family's displacement nearly half a century ago. As soon as I met Priscilla, her eagerness to connect was evident. She was a Reformed Jew, and in my mind she represented the great Jewish liberal tradition of debate and free thought. The fact that I was able to talk so freely to Priscilla and Suzanne served as a sad reminder to me of the lack of debate in Islam today. As Priscilla explained the evolution of Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox branches of Judaism in America, it occurred to me that Islam needed a parallel experience. When I shared my family story with Priscilla, I felt I was in the presence of someone open to meaningful dialogue.
I've never interacted so intimately with a Muslim woman. I kept thinking as I listened to her speak about her concerns that this is going to be an interesting meeting. I was in a room with two substantial, intelligent women who felt an urgent need to connect and produce something meaningful out of that connection. Rania told us of her family's history in Palestine, but not as an angry person with a political axe to grind, but as a loving mother with a family and a story to tell. It was as simple as that.
From the time I discovered Rania was a Muslim, I was intrigued. My knowledge of Islam was meager. I knew Muslims followed the teaching of an Arab called Muhammad, and that they worshipped in mosques, and that they had a holy book called the Quran, and that they were obliged to make a pilgrimage to Mecca once in their lifetime. But I held an image of Islam as a violent religion, controlled by men, a religion of mistreated women, polygamy, and an eye for an eye justice systems. Stories about women being stoned, and about the 9/11 attackers being inspired by the Quran. But during my travels in Muslim countries, I had seen women treated as second-class citizens. I had left the Catholic Church to become Episcopalian, in part because Catholics don't allow women to become priests. So I was curious to learn how Rania could reconcile her modern life with Islam. After all, she wasn't fighting a jihad against the West. In retrospect, she was on a jihad, a word I later learned to mean an inner struggle. She was struggling to define her Muslim faith, and she's struggling to have this faith recognized in the West.
The first question each of them asked each other was, "What is your religious background?"
I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. My father was from Massachusetts, and my mother was from Hollywood, California. Although they were both Jewish, they came from very different backgrounds. My mother claims that her family served spaghetti as a traditional Passover meal. My father's seders lasted hours while everyone digested the matzo balls my grandmother had slaved over for days. I spent 4 years in a Hebrew day school studying Hebrew, Torah, and Jewish history all morning, and secular subjects like math and history in the afternoon. The whole experience felt serious and no nonsense. I was a good student, learned my prayers, and began praying by myself at home. But when I was in the 7th grade, my father abruptly pulled me out of the Hebrew day school and enrolled me in a Quaker day school. While my father was proud to be a Jew, he was a Jew on his own terms. Sometimes he fasted on Yom Kippur, other years he didn't. On some Passovers, he ate no bread, but other years he started the day with an English muffin. As a family, we went to temple on important Jewish holidays. But at school, I went to chapel every day and sang dozens of hymns along with my new blonde friends. In December, a musical assembly included Christmas carols and prayers. I hesitated over the name Jesus, but I sang and appreciated the beauty of the songs. I enjoyed going to a Quaker school. The open-mindedness felt liberating in contrast to my years at the Hebrew day school, which I remember as rigid and small-minded. In college, I socialized with both Christians and Jewish friends, but I dated a WASP from Boston. Growing up Jewish meant growing up with an attachment to Israel. I remember my father boasting of the bravery of the soldiers during the 6-Day War. I took a trip to Israel with my family when I was 12. We visited cousins of my grandmother in a kibbutz near Galilee. Our trip reinforced my connections as a Jew to Israel, which was stressed at the Hebrew day school. But as I grew older and began to learn more about the politics of the Middle East, I became pretty uncomfortable with Israel's policies on the West Bank. I thought it was an unnecessarily provocative act to build settlements in what was formerly Jordan. I told that to Rania and to let her know that I was an enlightened Jew, a Jew who was open-minded to the issues of Palestinian rights.
I am a Muslim woman of Palestinian heritage, and no matter where I've lived, I have always been an outcast. I have struggled with stereotypes others have attributed to a Muslim Palestinian woman. This has affected many aspects of my life. As dispossessed refugees and all the hardships and insecurities that go with that, my mother and father were firm believers in the merits of education as a necessary tool for survival. So in Kuwait and Dubai, when they found the public schools lacking in curriculum and qualified teachers, they sent me to the privately run French lycée in Kuwait and the English school in Dubai. This meant I was one of very few Muslims, if not the only Muslim in my class. I learned my ABCs in French and wrote letters to Cher Papa Noël or Dear Father Christmas in the month of December. In Dubai, I sang Silent Night and Noel at school Christmas concerts, and I danced the color purple in my school's production of Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. My religion was not a required part of the school curriculum, and whatever I learned about Islam was strictly through the customs and traditions of my family. We didn't need a mosque, but we practiced Islam at home through prayer, charity, and traditions. During Ramadan, the holiest month of the Islamic calendar, my parents and grandparents fasted from dawn to sunset. I remember waiting for the sound of the cannon, which signaled the end of the day's fast. During this month, we exercised discipline and attempt to cleanse the mind, body, and soul of vices and bad thoughts. As a child, when I attempted to fast, I was told that I was too young and my growing body needed nourishment. My grandmother advised me to participate in the spirit of the month by meeting different challenges, controlling my temper, or giving a thirsty person a glass of water before taking care of my own thirst. I was told this was a sure way to go to paradise. The highlight of the month was always Eid, the celebration marking the end of Ramadan. We received gifts and allowances and dressed from head to toe in new clothing for this occasion. Traditions became an integral part of my life. Today, I always carry a Quran in my purse and sometimes wear a verse from the Quran around my neck. I pray, but not necessarily 5 times a day, as more traditional Muslims do. I am reluctant to throw out leftover bread without kissing it and asking God's forgiveness, a custom reminding Muslims that many people in our world remain hungry. And I still go through our apartment making sure that no shoes remain with their soles facing upward towards God in a sign of disrespect.
My background sounds so dull in comparison. It was ordinary, safe, and Midwestern, like Wonder Bread and Hallmark cards. When I was growing up in Kansas City, I never missed a Sunday Mass or even Masses on the holy days of obligation that don't necessarily fall on Sundays. We went to church together every weekend. As my 4 siblings and I grew older, we got involved in sports or jobs, and that kept us busy on Sunday mornings. Our Mass attendance was still monitored by our parents. And with 3 Catholic churches in an easy drive, there was always a Mass going on somewhere, sometime between 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon and 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. Prayer was a part of our life at home too. We said grace before dinner.
Pull back.
We knelt by our beds for nighttime prayers. In my bedroom, I had a plastic statue of the Holy Family on whose base were the words, "The family that prays together stays together." Inside that base was a rosary. The 3 oldest children took turns reading a chapter of the Bible aloud each night after dinner. Once, as I listened to my 8-year-old brother sound out the words, "Sadducees," my attention turned to the sounds of a freeze tag game next door. I would have given my new AM/FM radio to jump out of my seat and join the fun. I spent 12 years at Catholic schools and went to an overabundance of religious services. Once a week with my class, once with the whole school, and once again with my family on Sundays. I remember one of the priests telling us about saints who suffered stigmata. St. Francis of Assisi's hands and feet bled in exactly the same places that Jesus had bled, he told us. And we learned about people in modern life who had similar bleeding experiences. Then we wondered, would this ever happen to us? How would we ever play volleyball? I went to confession about once a month. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," I would say through the screen dividing the sections of the confessional booth. It's been 1 month since my last confession, and in that time I've been mean to my brothers and sisters, I disobeyed my parents, and I took Twinkies out of the freezer without permission. For that, I would say 3 Hail Marys, and then have a clean white soul again. How lucky to die right after confession, I thought. I would go straight to heaven. In spite of my 12 years of parochial school, I really didn't have much of a theological understanding of Christianity. In the 6th grade, we memorized Jesus' Beatitudes. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." To fulfill my religious credits, I took 2 Eastern religion classes. Now it strikes me as odd that Islam was not included in that either. I was exposed to Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism. In humanities, I learned Greek and Roman mythology, but Islam entered my life peripherally. It came through travel, through books, and through war. Though I attended church infrequently during college, I considered myself Catholic. In Rome, I was brought to tears by the tombs of so many courageous Christian martyrs who had died for their faith. And then I wept before Michelangelo's Pieta. I thank God for the gift of being raised a Catholic and then resolved to be a better one. But the thrill of being 20-something in New York got in the way. And when I had children, I began to focus on my spiritual life in a significant way. My husband and I made the switch from Catholicism to the less rigid Episcopal Church.
Now, Rania, Suzanne, and Priscilla had started out months earlier talking about what Jews believe, what Christians believe, and what Muslims believe. They were like soldiers galloping from their camps, carrying the standard of their people. They had presented those beliefs to each other and examined them to see if they had any of the same markings. But now, it was time to begin talking about the real people underneath. In other words, each of them. So they made a commitment to each other to examine their own beliefs and prejudices and discuss them frankly. They would no longer hide behind Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. They each set out about writing what they thought was important about their respective religions to include in the children's book. They brought their writings to their meetings and had many discussions. But the most contentious one was about the crucifixion, because Priscilla had quite a problem with what Suzanne had written about it.
You know, Suzanne, this is kind of upsetting to me. This stuff you read about the Jews killing Christ.
Jews killing Christ? I never said that.
You calmly read Wicked Hands and Israel. How about reading that again?
Jews as wicked men? I never said that.
Right there. You talk about the men of Israel being the wicked hands who killed Christ. That's what people have called us Jews for years and centuries. Christ killers.
I've never heard that term before.
Look, I'm not making this up. The point is, we've always been blamed for it.
Well, I'll take another look at it.
Why can't you just remove the crucifixion from your story?
I really can't do that, Priscilla.
You can't write that story. It just fuels the fire of anti-Semitism. How can you not know that?
It's a tiny minority. Sensible people today don't hold Jews responsible for Jesus' death 2,000 years ago. I can't believe she's trying to take away from me the most essential story of Christianity because of an insult she's perceived, but I've never intended.
Certainly Suzanne meant no harm in her story.
After that, Priscilla did a lot of homework, talking to her husband and a friend and also a rabbi. At the next meeting, she came early to talk to Rania alone.
Rania, every single person I spoke to over the weekend, Jew and non-Jew, has heard the term Christ killer.
That doesn't surprise me.
But Suzanne hadn't heard it, and she made me feel nuts and paranoid. If she can't understand why I have a problem, I don't see how I can continue to work on this project.
We might not have a project here. Priscilla had a resignation letter ready just in case.
Priscilla, do you think it's reasonable for you to take what I wrote about the crucifixion personally?
Well, yes, it was visceral and emotional.
So what was your reaction based on?
I think all Jews are sensitive to anti-Semitism because of the Holocaust. You can't underestimate what that means to the Jews.
I don't think people underestimate its meaning,
But if it happened once, it can happen again.
Do you really think that?
The world is a different place, but sometimes fear is not rational. It's emotional. Even the name of the Easter service you described to me, the Passion Play, sounds like the Jews are bloodthirsty, like they're calling out for Jesus to be nailed to the cross.
Priscilla, the Passion Play is not about you at all. It's not about the Jews.
But when you call out, crucify him, you're playing the part of the bad guys. And P.S., the bad guys were the Jews.
No. The Romans were the ones in power.
Jews have tried for centuries not to rock the boat. After the crucifixion, Christians created what they thought was a better religion. A religion that became hugely popular, leaving Jews in the dust. Then Jesus came along, and we didn't jump on the bandwagon, which in the long run has made our lives as Jews much more difficult.
Before their next meeting, Priscilla had a disturbing conversation with a woman that made her once again feel like an outsider. They discussed extremist religious groups. Soon, they were discussing evangelical Christians and why they support Israel so strongly.
This woman was a Christian and knew someone with strong evangelical beliefs. She said they want the state of Israel to exist because that's where they expect the Messiah will come again. And once the Messiah comes, they believe that all Jews will convert or perish. That's what the religious right isn't saying when they talk about keeping Israel safe. One day they expect there'll be no Jews left. I have never heard anyone explain to me exactly what the evangelicals believed about Jews, the Messiah, and the end of the world, and which even had a name, the rapture. The story disturbed me. It didn't sound good for the Jews, as my father might have said.
I still wonder what influences in your Jewish background affect your reaction to my retelling of the crucifixion.
I think I'm just wired to be sensitive to any situation in which a Jew feels excluded from the majority. Maybe that's hard to grasp because as a Christian, Suzanne, you're the majority. So you really feel persecution. And by the way, why do you have such a problem with me having a problem?
I don't, really. I'm just curious about what's behind it.
I feel I have to justify my feelings to you, Suzanne.
I'm not asking you to justify your feelings. They happened. They're valid. I just like to understand why Jesus made you so uncomfortable.
I don't know. Every time I see him up on a cross, suffering and bloody, I avert my eyes. When I checked into a hotel room in Italy once, and there was a crucifix over my bed, I took it down.
You did?
Yes. I didn't want a dead man who meant nothing to me hanging over my head. It's disturbing.
Jesus meant nothing to you, Priscilla? I doubt that. He must have meant something if you went to the trouble of taking down that crucifix.
In the weeks following the crucifixion crisis, Priscilla realized that maybe Jesus was someone she needed to understand better. She watched a TV program about the last days of Jesus and compared it to what Suzanne had written for their book. Jesus had stood for everything righteous, she realized. His mere presence on earth was incredibly powerful. The kindness and goodness that emanated from him were Christian, in the best sense of the word. What a difference that made to her. At their next meeting, Priscilla told Suzanne and Rania about the TV program.
I said, I'm on a first-name basis with Jesus. It was a joke, but I did mean it. Jesus no longer scared me. I no longer felt like a bad Jew for finding his words and deeds fascinating.